The fluorescent light above Maya Sinclair's kitchen table flickered twice before settling into its familiar tired hum. She'd been meaning to replace that bulb for 3 months now, but replacement bulbs cost $4.99 at the hardware store on the corner, and $4.99 was the difference between Lily having apple slices in her lunchbox or going without a snack for the day. Maya glanced at the digital clock on the microwave. The numbers glowed green in the darkness of her Newark apartment, casting just enough light for her to see the stack of envelopes spread across the table like a losing hand of cards. She picked up the first one. Electric bill, $127.40 past due. The second, rent notice, $850 due in 12 days. A yellow sticky note from her landlord was attached. Final warning before legal action. The third made her stomach clench. Bright Horizons Daycare, $892 for the month. A handwritten note from the director. We understand times are difficult, but we cannot hold Lily's spot past the 15th without payment. Maya pulled out her phone, opened the calculator app she'd been using far too often lately, and added the numbers again, hoping they'd somehow changed since midnight. They hadn't. Total debt, $4,847.62. Current bank balance, $234.88. Days until everything fell apart. 12. She pressed her palms against her eyes until she saw stars. 28 years old, bachelor's degree in finance from Rutgers, 3 years of experience as a junior analyst before her company downsized and eliminated her entire department. That was 8 months ago. Since then, she'd applied to 47 positions. 46 had rejected her. One had ghosted her after a promising second interview. And then 3 days ago, the email had arrived. Maya reached for her laptop. Its screen cracked in the corner from when Lily had accidentally knocked it off the couch last month. She opened her inbox and read the message for perhaps the 100th time. Dear Miss Sinclair, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected for the final round interview for the position of Senior Financial Analyst at Vanguard Capital Group. Your interview is scheduled for Thursday, December 12th at 9 a.m. sharp at our Manhattan headquarters, 745 7th Avenue, 42nd floor. Please note that punctuality is highly valued at Vanguard Capital Group. Late arrivals will not be accommodated. We look forward to meeting you. Regards, Human Resources Department, Vanguard Capital Group. Maya had researched Vanguard Capital obsessively since receiving the email. Founded by Richard Cole 23 years ago, now run by his son, Ethan Cole, after Richard's death from a heart attack 6 years prior. Assets under management, $47 billion. Average salary for senior analysts, $95,000 base, plus bonus. The kind of salary that would mean Lily could have apple slices and cheese sticks. The kind of salary that would mean Maya could sleep through the night without waking up in a cold sweat, calculating numbers that never added up. She closed the laptop and stood. Her chair scraped against the worn linoleum floor. She moved quietly across the small apartment, living room, kitchen, and dining area all compressed into a single space, toward the narrow hallway that led to their bedroom. They shared it, her and Lily. Maya had given up her privacy 3 years ago when they'd had to move from their one bedroom to the studio with a sectioned-off sleeping area, which the landlord generously called a bedroom to justify the rent. Lily was asleep in the twin bed against the wall, her 4-year-old body curled around a teddy bear with a missing ear and stuffing leaking from one arm. Maya had found that bear at Goodwill for $2, the only toy she'd been able to afford when Lily was born, and Maya had been alone in a hospital room. No partner, no parents, nobody to hold her hand and tell her it would be okay. The bear's name was Mr. Buttons, though he'd lost his actual button eyes long ago, and now had mismatched ones that Maya had sewn on herself, one black, one blue. Lily loved him fiercely anyway. He's special, Lily had explained once with the unshakable logic of a 3-year-old. Because he's different. Maya leaned against the doorframe, watching her daughter breathe. In and out, in and out. That rhythm was the only thing that had kept Maya going through the darkest months. The months after her parents died. The months after Daniel walked out. The months of rejection letters and dwindling savings, and learning exactly how long you could stretch a box of pasta when that was all you had. Tomorrow had to work. It had to. She turned back toward the living room. But something caught her eye in the dim light. Her closet door was slightly open, and hanging on the outside hook was the blazer she'd laid out for the interview. Coral-colored, structured shoulders, simple but elegant. It had been her mother's. Maya crossed the room and touched the fabric gently, as if it might disintegrate. Her mother had worn this blazer to her first job interview after immigrating to America, a receptionist position at a dental office in Elizabeth, New Jersey. She'd gotten the job. She'd worked there for 22 years until the accident. Maya slipped her hand into the inside pocket, a habit she'd developed since inheriting the blazer. And her fingers found the folded piece of paper she knew would be there. She didn't need to unfold it. She'd memorized the words long ago, written in her mother's careful handwriting. A note tucked into Maya's suitcase when she'd left for college. "You deserve every good thing, mija. Never forget that." Maya pressed the paper against her chest for a moment, then returned it to the pocket. Tomorrow had to work. She couldn't afford for it not to. The alarm went off at 5:30, though Maya had barely slept. She moved through her morning routine with military precision, a skill she'd developed out of necessity when you were the only adult responsible for getting a 4-year-old fed, dressed, and out the door. Lily woke slowly, rubbing her eyes with small fists as Maya gently extracted Mr. Buttons from her grip. "Morning, baby," Maya said softly. "Time to get ready. Big day today." "Is today the day you get the job?" Lily asked, her voice still thick with sleep. Maya felt her heart squeeze. She tried not to talk about the interview too much, not wanting to get Lily's hopes up, but children absorbed everything, understood more than adults gave them credit for. "I'm going to try my very best," Maya said, kneeling to help Lily out of bed. "That's all any of us can do, right?" "Right," Lily agreed solemnly. "Then, Mama, if you get the job, can I get new shoes? The ones I have hurt my toes." Maya looked at Lily's feet, at the sneakers she'd been wearing for 6 months now, bought on clearance at Target when they'd still had a little breathing room. Lily was growing so fast. Of course the shoes were too small. "If I get the chus," Maya said, and had to stop, had to swallow the lump in her throat. "You can get new shoes, whatever color you want." "Even purple?" "Even purple," Lily beamed. And that smile, gap-toothed and pure and trusting, was worth every sleepless night, every rejection, every moment Maya had questioned whether she was strong enough to keep going. By 6:45, they were dressed and ready. Maya in her mother's coral blazer, a simple white blouse, black slacks she'd pressed the night before with an iron that only worked on the highest setting. Lily in her favorite dress, the blue one with the small flowers, because Maya hadn't had time to do laundry this week, and it was the only clean thing left. Maya grabbed her bag, portfolio, resume copies, the small notebook where she'd written down every possible interview question and practiced her answers, and took one last look in the tiny bathroom mirror. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, cheekbones a little too sharp from the stress diet she'd been unintentionally following. But the blazer fit well. Her hair was neat, and she'd even managed to apply mascara without smudging it. "You deserve every good thing." "Okay, Lilybug," Maya said, holding out her hand. "Let's go." The daycare was a 15-minute walk from their apartment, housed in the basement of a church that offered subsidized rates for single mothers. Maya signed Lily in, handed over the packed lunch she'd assembled the night before, peanut butter sandwich, a few crackers, an apple she'd saved by cutting out the soft spots, and knelt down to say goodbye. "Be good for Miss Keisha, okay?" Lily nodded, then threw her arms around Maya's neck. "Mama." "Yes, baby? You're going to get it. The job. I know you will." Maya held her daughter tight, breathing in the smell of the generic shampoo they used, the faint sweetness of childhood. "Thank you, baby. That means everything." She kissed Lily's forehead, forced herself to let go, and walked out the door. She had exactly enough time to catch the 7:15 PATH train from Newark to Hoboken, transfer to the Manhattan-bound train, and arrive at Vanguard Capital's building by 8:30, 30 minutes early, plenty of buffer room for any delays. The plan was solid. She'd triple-checked the schedule. Nothing could go wrong. The Newark train station at 7:05 was a chaos of commuters. The platform crowded with people in heavy coats, clutching coffee cups, their breath visible in the December air. Maya found a spot near the edge, portfolio bag pressed against her chest, eyes scanning for the approaching train. It arrived on time. She boarded, found a seat near the door, and allowed herself a small exhale of relief. Step 1 complete. The train pulled into Hoboken at 7:38. Maya exited with the crowd, her heels clicking against the station floor as she made her way toward the transfer platform. The next train to Manhattan would arrive at 7:52. She was perfectly on schedule. That's when she saw her. The woman was sitting alone on a bench near the far wall of the station, partially hidden by a concrete pillar. She was elderly, perhaps late 70s, with silver hair pinned back in an elegant twist that suggested a habit of careful grooming. She wore a cream-colored cardigan with pearl buttons, pressed slacks, and sensible flats. A string of pearls hung around her neck, the kind that looked real because they probably were. But it wasn't the woman's appearance that made Maya stop. It was her face. Even from 20 feet away, Maya could see the pallor, the grayish tinge around the lips. The woman's hand was pressed against her chest, fingers slightly curled, and her other hand gripped the edge of the bench as if she were trying to anchor herself to the earth. Her eyes were open but unfocused, staring at nothing. Around her, the station churned with commuters, hundreds of people rushing past, absorbed in their phones, their thoughts, their destinations. Not one of them glanced at the elderly woman on the bench. She might as well have been invisible. Maya checked her watch. 7:44. The Manhattan train arrived at 7:52. 8 minutes. If she missed this train, the next one wouldn't arrive until 8:15, which would put her at Vanguard's building at approximately 9:05 at the earliest. 5 minutes late at minimum, possibly more if she had to wait for an elevator. Late arrivals will not be accommodated. Her chest tightened. This was her one chance, her only chance. Lily's shoes that hurt her toes, the electric bill with the red past due stamp, the landlord's note about legal action. All of it depended on her walking through Vanguard's doors at 9 sharp. But the woman on the bench was still pressing her hand to her chest, still gray, still alone. Maya thought about her mother, about the accident that had taken both her parents, a drunk driver running a red light while her father was driving her mother to choir practice. They died together. At least that was the only comfort anyone could offer. At least they were together, as if that made up for Maya being 19 years old and suddenly an orphan alone in a hospital waiting room, while a doctor with tired eyes told her there was nothing they could do. Had anyone stopped to help? Had anyone tried? The question had haunted her for 9 years. The witnesses had said the accident was instantaneous, no chance of survival. But Maya had always wondered if someone had at least held her mother's hand, if someone had been there in those final moments to tell her it was okay, that her daughter would be okay, that she wasn't alone. The elderly woman on the bench looked up. Her eyes found Maya's across the crowded station. And for a moment, something passed between them, a flicker of recognition, not of faces, but of circumstances. The woman's expression wasn't pleading, it was resigned. The look of someone who had learned not to expect help because help never came. Maya's feet were moving before she made the conscious decision. "Ma'am," she crouched beside the bench, lowering herself to the woman's eye level. "Are you all right? Do you need me to call for help?" The woman blinked as if surprised to be addressed. Up close, her pallor was even more pronounced, a faint sheen of sweat visible at her hairline despite the December chill. I'm fine, dear," the woman said, her voice trembling slightly. "Just need a moment. Forgot my medication this morning like a fool, and my heart's letting me know it." She attempted a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just need to catch my breath." Maya's mind raced through the basic first aid course she'd taken during college, a requirement for her part-time job at the campus recreation center. Chest discomfort, shortness of breath, pallor, classic warning signs of cardiac distress. "Ma'am, I really think I should call an ambulance." No, please." The woman's free hand reached out and gripped Maya's arm with surprising strength. "No ambulance. I just need to get home. I live right here in Hoboken, just a few blocks from the station. I've had these spells before. I just need to take my medication and lie down, but I don't think I can walk right now." And she broke off, embarrassment coloring her already gray cheeks. "I was trying to call my son, but my phone—" She gestured weakly to her purse, which had fallen to the ground beside the bench, contents partially spilled. Maya looked at her watch again. 7:48, 4 minutes until her train. She thought about Lily's voice that morning. "You're gonna get it. I know you will." She thought about the stack of bills on her kitchen table. She thought about her mother's note. You deserve every good thing. But she also thought about what kind of person she wanted to be. What kind of person she wanted Lily to grow up watching. What her mother would have done standing here in this station, faced with a stranger in need and a train to catch. Some decisions aren't about what you can afford to lose. They're about what you can't afford to become. What's your address? Maya asked. The woman stared at her. I'm sorry? Your address, I'm going to take you home. But dear, you look like you're on your way somewhere important. Your suit, your bag, nothing's more important than making sure you're safe. Maya bent down to gather the scattered contents of the woman's purse. A leather wallet, reading glasses, a small pillbox. Empty, she noted. A phone with a cracked screen. My name is Maya. What's yours? Eleanor. The woman's eyes had grown bright with unexpected tears. Eleanor Cole. Well, Eleanor, let's get you home. Maya hailed a cab outside the station, a luxury she couldn't afford, but emergency situations demanded emergency measures. Eleanor's hand trembled as she gripped Maya's arm, and twice during the short walk to the taxi stand, Maya had to stop and steady her. The apartment building was only 4 blocks from the station, but it was a 4-block journey Eleanor clearly couldn't have made on her own. The building itself was beautiful, a pre-war brownstone with carved stone details around the entrance. The kind of building Maya had walked past countless times in her life, never imagining she'd step inside. The doorman recognized Eleanor immediately. Mrs. Cole, is everything all right? Just a spell, Thomas. This young woman was kind enough to help me. The elevator was ornate with brass fixtures and a mirror that made Maya suddenly aware of how disheveled she must look. Hair escaping from her ponytail, coat askew, cheeks flushed from the cold and the stress. She didn't care. She just needed to make sure Eleanor was safe. And then she could, what, run to the train station? The next Manhattan-bound train had already left. The one after that would get her to Fifth Avenue by 9:15 at the earliest. She was going to be late. The thought sent a spike of panic through her chest, but she pushed it down, one crisis at a time. Eleanor's apartment was on the 5th floor. Maya helped her inside, taking in the space with quick glances, high ceilings, tall windows, antique furniture that looked like it had stories to tell. A grand piano sat in one corner, its surface covered with framed photographs. Above the fireplace hung an oil painting of a younger Eleanor standing beside a man with kind eyes and silver hair. My husband, Eleanor said, following Maya's gaze. Richard, he passed 6 years ago. I'm sorry. So am I every day. Eleanor lowered herself onto a velvet settee, color already beginning to return to her cheeks now that she was home. My pills are in the bathroom cabinet. Would you mind, dear? Maya found the medication, nitroglycerin, just as she'd suspected, and brought it to Eleanor with a glass of water from the kitchen. She watched the older woman take the pill, watched her breathing slowly steady. Thank you, Eleanor said, reaching for Maya's hand. You have no idea what you've done in that station. Everyone just walked past. I must have sat there for 20 minutes before you stopped. Someone should have stopped sooner, but no one did except you. Eleanor squeezed her hand, and I saw your face when you looked at your watch. You were going somewhere important. Don't try to tell me otherwise. Maya hesitated. There was no point in lying. I had a job interview at 9. Eleanor's face fell. Oh dear. And because of me, because of you, I know I made the right choice. Maya tried to smile, though it felt forced. Jobs come and go, but I couldn't have lived with myself if I'd walked past and something had happened to you. What company? The interview. Where was it? Vanguard Capital in Manhattan. Something flickered across Eleanor's face. Recognition quickly masked. I see. Well, she patted Maya's hand. The universe works in mysterious ways, my dear. Don't give up hope just yet. Maya wanted to believe her, but the numbers didn't lie. $4,476 in debt, $234.88 in the bank, 12 days until everything collapsed. She stayed with Eleanor until she was certain the older woman was stable, until a home health aide arrived, called by the doorman, apparently standard protocol for Mrs. Cole's spells. Then she hugged Eleanor goodbye, the older woman insisted on it, and left. It was 8:52 a.m. when she stepped onto Fifth Avenue. The Vanguard Capitol building was a tower of glass and steel, the kind of structure that seemed designed to intimidate. Maya stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking up at the 42 floors that represented everything she'd been working toward for 8 months. Behind those windows was the life she'd imagined, stable, secure, with room to breathe. Late arrivals will not be accommodated, but she'd come this far. She had to try. She pushed through the revolving door and crossed the marble lobby to the reception desk, acutely aware of her reflection in every polished surface, her blazer slightly wrinkled now from the cab ride, a strand of hair loose against her cheek, the flush of exertion on her face. "I'm here for a 9 o'clock interview," she told the receptionist, a young man with perfectly gelled hair and a perfectly neutral expression. "The senior financial analyst position. My name is Maya Sinclair." The receptionist's eyes flicked to the clock behind him. 9:07. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. The subtle rearrangement of someone delivering bad news. "One moment, please." He picked up a phone, murmured something into it, waited, murmured again, hung up. "Someone will be down shortly." Maya thanked him and stepped back, her heart hammering against her ribs. Someone will be down. Not "you can go up now." Not "the interview room is on the 42nd floor, elevator bank B." Just someone will be down. She knew what was coming. The elevator chimed and a woman emerged. She was perhaps 40, impeccably dressed in a black sheath dress and matching blazer that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, not a strand out of place, and her heels clicked against the marble floor with the precision of a metronome. "Miss Sinclair?" "Yes." The woman didn't offer her hand. "Victoria Ashford, Executive Director of Human Resources." "It's nice to meet you. I apologize for my tardiness. There was an emergency situation on my commute that I had to—" "Miss Sinclair." Victoria's voice was cool, polished, utterly devoid of warmth. "Your interview was scheduled for 9 o'clock. It is now." She glanced at her watch, though Maya was certain she already knew the exact time. 9:12 to Miami. At Vanguard Capital, we consider punctuality a non-negotiable reflection of character and professionalism. If a candidate cannot arrive on time for an interview, the very first impression, we cannot in good conscience trust them to meet deadlines for our clients. Maya felt the words like physical blows. "I understand that, and I take full responsibility for being late, but please, if I could just explain—" "Every late candidate has an explanation, Miss Sinclair. Traffic, subway delays, alarm clock malfunctions." Victoria's smile was precise and entirely without warmth. "We've heard them all, and while I'm sure your explanation feels very valid to you, the reality is that other candidates, equally qualified, equally capable, manage to arrive on time. We will be moving forward with them. But your candidacy has been terminated. Thank you for your interest in Vanguard Capital, and we wish you the best in your future endeavors." Victoria turned away, already moving back toward the elevators, her heels resuming their metronomic click against the floor. Maya stood frozen. She thought about the stack of bills on her kitchen table. She thought about Lily asking about new shoes. She thought about her mother's blazer and her mother's note, and all the ways she tried so hard to be worthy of both. "You deserve every good thing." "Do I?" Maya thought. "Do I really?" She turned toward the revolving door. Her legs felt heavy, mechanical, as if someone else were operating them. The glass panels caught her reflection. A woman in a coral blazer that suddenly seemed foolish, hopeful in a way that had no place in this building made of steel and marble and cold indifference. She pushed through the door and stepped onto Fifth Avenue. The December wind hit her face, sharp and biting, and she welcomed it. She welcomed anything that might explain away the stinging in her eyes. She had taken perhaps 10 steps when she heard it. The sound of the revolving door spinning urgently behind her, followed by rapid footsteps on the pavement. Excuse me, please wait." Maya didn't turn. Probably the receptionist telling her she'd forgotten something, or Victoria delivering one final piece of humiliation. "Miss Sinclair." It was a man's voice, deep, slightly out of breath, not the receptionist. Maya stopped, turned. He was tall, over 6 feet, and he was running toward her in a suit that probably cost more than her car. One hand raised as if hailing a taxi, the other pressed against his chest as he caught his breath. His hair was dark, touched with gray at the temples, and his face was the kind of face that appeared on magazine covers and financial news networks. Maya had seen that face before multiple times on Forbes, on Bloomberg, on the massive portrait that hung in Vanguard Capital's lobby. Ethan Cole, CEO Billionaire, the man who ran the company that had just rejected her. He stopped in front of her, breathing hard. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble along his jaw that suggested a morning too busy for careful grooming. His tie was slightly askew. "You're the woman," he said, still catching his breath. "The one in the coral blazer. The one who you were at the Hoboken station this morning." Maya stared at him, uncomprehending. "I what?" "My mother." Ethan's voice was intense, urgent. "Eleanor Cole, you helped her. You put her in a cab. You took her home. You stayed with her until the aide arrived." The pieces fell into place slowly, like a combination lock clicking open. Eleanor Cole. Mrs. Cole, the doorman had said. The brownstone apartment with its antiques and photographs. The portrait above the fireplace of Eleanor, standing beside a silver-haired man, Richard Cole, founder of Vanguard Capital. Eleanor Cole was this man's mother. "She called me," Ethan continued, 15 minutes ago. "She told me what happened, that she had a spell at the station, that nobody stopped, that a young woman in a coral blazer saved her life." His eyes swept over Maya's blazer, her disheveled hair, her shell-shocked expression. "She told me you said you had an interview, that you were going to be late because of her." He paused. "This interview was at my company, wasn't it?" Maya couldn't find words. She just nodded. Ethan was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, stripped of the executive polish. "My mother said you looked at your watch. She said you knew you were going to be late, and you stayed anyway. She needed help. Anyone would have." "No." The word was sharp, almost angry. "Not anyone. My mother sat in that station for 20 minutes. She counted. 20 minutes, hundreds of people, and every single one of them walked past like she didn't exist." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Except you." Maya didn't know what to say. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, still reeling from the whiplash of hope and rejection. And now, whatever this was, "I just did what was right," she said finally. "I couldn't walk past her. I couldn't live with myself if I had." Ethan studied her face for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "What's your name?" Maya Sinclair." He typed something, scrolled, typed again. She watched his brow furrow, watched his lips press together. "You were the 9 o'clock interview, senior financial analyst position." He looked up. "Victoria rejected you." She said punctuality is a non-negotiable reflection of character. Maya tried to keep the bitterness out of her voice. She wasn't sure she succeeded. Something flickered across Ethan's face. Irritation, or perhaps something sharper. "Miss Sinclair," he said, "would you be willing to come back inside?" Maya blinked. "What?" "I'd like to interview you myself." "But your HR director said—" "I know what she said." Ethan's voice was calm but firm. "I'm the CEO of this company. I can make exceptions when they're warranted, and I believe this situation warrants one." Maya stared at him, trying to read the catch, the trick, the fine print. Years of disappointment had trained her to be suspicious of good fortune. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. They just didn't. But Ethan Cole was standing on a Manhattan sidewalk in December, tie askew and breath still slightly short from running, waiting for her answer. "Okay," Maya said. "Yes, I'll come back inside." The elevator ride to the 42nd floor was silent. Maya stood in the corner, hyper-aware of Ethan's presence beside her, of the mirrored walls reflecting infinite versions of this surreal moment. In the reflection, she could see the loose strand of hair she hadn't had time to fix, the slight crease in her blazer from the cab. She looked like what she was, a woman who had been through an ordeal that morning, who was running on adrenaline and hope and the stubborn refusal to give up. The doors opened onto a reception area different from the lobby below. This space was quieter, more refined. Thick carpet, understated artwork, a desk staffed by a woman who looked up and immediately stood when she saw Ethan. "Mr. Cole, your 10 o'clock call with Singapore. Push it to 11 and tell Victoria Ashford I need to see her in my office in 10 minutes. "Yes, sir." They walked through a set of glass doors into a corner office that occupied what seemed like an impossible amount of space for Manhattan real estate. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of Central Park to the north and a sea of skyscrapers to the south. A massive desk dominated one end of the room, but Ethan gestured toward a seating area by the windows. 2 leather armchairs and a small table. "Please sit." Maya sat. Her back was straight, her hands folded in her lap, her portfolio bag placed carefully beside her chair. She had no idea what to expect. Ethan didn't sit immediately. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city for a long moment before turning to face her. I'm going to ask you some questions, he said, and I'd like you to answer honestly, not what you think I want to hear. Honestly? All right. Why were you on the PATH train this morning? Where do you live? Newark. I live in Newark with my daughter. She watched his face for a reaction, the flicker of judgment that often appeared when people learned she was a single mother, the subtle recalibration of expectations. But Ethan's expression didn't change. And the commute from Newark to here, you planned that out. You knew how long it would take. I planned to arrive at 8:30, 30 minutes early. I triple-checked the train schedule. She stopped, took a breath. I don't take chances with important things. Not if I can help it. But you took a chance this morning by stopping for my mother. Maya met his eyes. That wasn't a chance. That was a choice. Tell me about your background. Not your resume, I can read that. Tell me about you. So she did. She told him about growing up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, the daughter of immigrants who worked double shifts to give her opportunities they'd never had. She told him about losing both parents in a single night when she was 19, about finishing college while working 3 part-time jobs, about the student loans she was still paying off a decade later. She told him about Daniel, not everything, but enough, that he'd seemed like a good man, that he'd left when she was 5 months pregnant, when the reality of fatherhood became too real and he decided it wasn't what he wanted after all, that she'd raised Lily alone since then, navigating daycare schedules and sick days, and the endless logistics of being the only adult responsible for a small, trusting human being. I'm not telling you this for sympathy, Maya said, echoing words she found herself repeating often. I'm telling you because you asked, and because I don't believe in hiding who I am. I've made my choices, I've lived with the consequences, and I've worked hard, harder than most people will ever understand, to build something stable for my daughter and myself. Ethan listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. What do you want, Maya, from this job, from your career? What are you actually looking for? Maya considered the question. She could give him the polished answer, the interview-ready response about professional growth and contributing to a dynamic team. But he'd asked for honesty. I want to stop being afraid, she said. I want to stop waking up at 3 a.m. doing math in my head, counting the days until the bills come due. I want my daughter to have shoes that fit and food that isn't rationed and a mother who isn't so exhausted she falls asleep at 8 p.m. because she's been running on empty for years. She paused. But I also want to do work that matters, work I'm good at. I want to be valued for what I contribute, not dismissed for what I lack. And I want to prove to myself, to my daughter, to everyone who's ever looked at me like I'm not worth their time, that where you start doesn't determine where you finish. The office was silent. Outside, the city churned on, taxis honking, pedestrians streaming, the endless machinery of Manhattan grinding forward. But in this room, suspended 42 floors above it all, time seemed to pause. Ethan stood, walked to his desk, and returned with a folder. This is a case study, he said, handing it to her. A potential acquisition we're considering. I'd like you to review it and give me your analysis. You have 30 minutes. Maya took the folder. Her hands were steady. Okay. There's a desk through that door. You can use it. I'll have my assistant bring you coffee. I don't need coffee, but thank you. She walked into the adjacent room, a small conference space with a table, chairs, and a window overlooking Madison Avenue, and opened the folder. For the next 25 minutes, the rest of the world ceased to exist. There was only the data, the numbers, the patterns hidden beneath the surface. This was where Maya excelled, where she had always excelled, the ability to look at a wall of information and see the story it was trying to tell. And this story had problems. The company under consideration, a tech startup called Nexus Dynamics, had impressive top-line growth. Revenue was up 40% year over year, user acquisition was strong, and the pitch deck was polished to a high shine. But beneath the surface, Maya found discrepancies. Accounts receivable growing faster than revenue, which usually indicated they were booking revenue they hadn't actually collected or may never collect. Customer acquisition costs that seemed artificially low, suggesting misallocated expenses or unreported costs. A footnote about strategic partnerships that, when she dug deeper into the supplementary materials, revealed what looked like aggressive revenue recognition practices. Something wasn't right. When she returned to Ethan's office, she didn't sit down. She stood in front of his desk, folder in hand, and laid out her findings. Nexus Dynamics is hiding something, she said. The numbers look good on the surface, but there are at least 3 red flags that suggest they're dressing up their financials. First, their receivables are growing at nearly twice the rate of their revenue, which usually indicates they're booking revenue they haven't actually collected or may never collect. Second, their customer acquisition costs are suspiciously low compared to industry benchmarks, which suggests they're either misallocating expenses or not reporting them fully. Third, and this is the big one, there's a buried reference to strategic revenue partnerships in the appendix so that, based on the structure described, looks like they might be round-tripping revenue through affiliated entities. She placed the folder on his desk. If I'm right and this acquisition goes through, Vanguard could be looking at a write-down of anywhere from 100 to 200 million once the real numbers come out. Maybe more. Ethan hadn't moved during her entire presentation. He sat perfectly still, his expression unreadable, his eyes fixed on her face. That acquisition, he said slowly, was proposed by a member of our board of directors. It's been fast-tracked through due diligence. The deal is scheduled to close in 3 weeks. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. She had just walked into a political minefield and detonated a bomb without even knowing it. I didn't know that. I was just analyzing the data. You asked me to. I asked you to give me your honest analysis, which is exactly what you did. Ethan stood. That board member has been pushing this deal for months. I've had concerns, but every analyst who's reviewed it has come back with a positive recommendation. He paused. You're the first person to find what you just found. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, or maybe everyone else was too afraid to look closely enough because they knew whose deal this was. Maya didn't know what to say. She stood there, hands slightly trembling, waiting for the other shoe to drop. This was the part where she got escorted out, where Ethan thanked her for her time and told her they'd be in touch, which they never would be. Instead, he walked to the door of his office and opened it. Victoria, he said to someone in the outer area, come in. Victoria Ashford entered, her expression arranged into professional neutrality that didn't quite mask the curiosity beneath. She glanced at Maya, and for a moment something flickered in her eyes, surprise, confusion, a hint of alarm. Mr. Cole, you wanted to see me. Victoria, you rejected Miss Sinclair's candidacy this morning because she arrived late. Is that correct? Victoria's composure didn't waver, but Maya saw the slight tension in her shoulders. That is correct, as per our company policy. Did you ask why she was late? Victoria hesitated. Every candidate has a reason for... Did you ask? The question hung in the air. Victoria's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. No, I did not. Ethan nodded slowly. Miss Sinclair was late because she stopped at the Hoboken station to help an elderly woman who was having a cardiac episode. That elderly woman was my mother. The color drained from Victoria's face. Maya almost felt sorry for her, almost. Miss Sinclair, Ethan continued, returning his attention to Maya, then came into this building anyway, knowing she was already late, knowing she would likely be rejected, because she doesn't give up easily. And when I gave her a case study to analyze, the same case study we've had 4 senior analysts review over the past month, she found what none of them found. She identified a pattern of financial irregularities that could cost this company $200 million. He turned to look at Victoria, and there was something cold in his expression. So please tell me again about her policy on punctuality. Victoria was silent. Her face had gone from pale to slightly red, a flush of humiliation creeping up from her collar. Miss Sinclair, Ethan said, I'd like to offer you a position at Vanguard Capital. Not the senior analyst role you applied for, something else. A new position, one I've been considering for some time. Director of Risk Assessment. You would report directly to me. Your job would be to look at potential investments and tell me the truth about what you see, regardless of who proposed them or what anyone else has said. He paused. Do you want the job? Maya opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Yes, she heard herself say. I want the job. The first Monday of her new position, Maya arrived at Vanguard Capital 45 minutes early. She hadn't been able to sleep the night before. She'd lain awake in the darkness of her Newark apartment, listening to Lily's soft breathing, replaying the events of the past week in her mind. The phone call from HR confirming the offer, the salary figure that had made her sit down suddenly on her kitchen chair, afraid her legs would give out. The benefits package, health insurance, dental, a 401k with company matching, things she'd only read about in articles about what real jobs offered. She'd paid off the electric bill. She'd given the landlord first month's rent on a new apartment in Jersey City, 2 bedrooms with a view of the Hudson River. She'd taken Lily to the shoe store and bought her purple sneakers that fit, and Lily had worn them around the store for 20 minutes, refusing to take them off. Now, standing in the lobby of the building that had rejected her just days ago, Maya allowed herself a moment to feel it all. The fear that hadn't fully dissipated, the gratitude that felt almost overwhelming, the determination to prove that Ethan Cole's gamble on her hadn't been misplaced. The elevator delivered her to the 42nd floor, where a new desk awaited her, a glass-walled office near the corner of the building with a view of Madison Avenue and her name already etched on a small plaque by the door. Maya Sinclair, Director, Risk Assessment. She was staring at the plaque, still trying to absorb the reality of it, when a voice came from behind her. "First day nerves?" She turned. Ethan was standing in the hallway, coffee cup in hand, dressed in the same uniform of expensive suits she was beginning to realize was his armor against the world. "Something like that. They'll fade eventually." He almost smiled. "My mother wants to see you again. She told me to tell you that she's making her famous pot roast on Sunday and she won't take no for an answer." Maya felt her lips curve into an answering smile. "Tell her I'll be there. Can I bring someone?" "Your daughter, Lily. She's 4. I hope that's—" "My mother loves children. She hasn't had a child in her house in a long time. She'll be thrilled." He nodded once, formal again, and continued down the hallway toward his office. Maya watched him go. This complicated man who ran a billion-dollar empire but still worried about his mother's health, who had policies and protocols but had broken them for a stranger because she'd done the right thing for his mother. She turned back to her office door, took a breath, and walked through. The weeks that followed were a blur of learning and adjustment. Maya's role was unlike anything she'd done before, where her previous positions had been about supporting analyses and following established procedures. This job required her to question everything, to be the voice of skepticism in a company that often moved at breakneck speed toward deals and acquisitions. It wasn't easy. Her first major presentation was to a room full of senior executives, most of whom had been in the industry longer than she'd been alive. She felt their eyes on her, measuring, assessing, wondering who this unknown woman was and why the CEO had elevated her so quickly. But she'd prepared meticulously. She'd run her numbers 3 times. She'd anticipated every question they might ask and prepared answers backed by data. And when one executive, a silver-haired man named Harrison, who'd been with the company since its founding, challenged her conclusions with a condescending smile, she responded with facts delivered without apology. "The data doesn't care about my experience level, Mr. Harrison. It says what it says. My job is to interpret it accurately, not to make it more palatable." The room had gone quiet. Harrison's smile had flickered, and after the meeting, 3 different people had stopped by her office to tell her they respected what she'd done. She was making allies, slowly, but she was also making enemies. Victoria Ashford had been transferred to a different department after the incident with Maya's rejection, but she hadn't forgotten. Maya would occasionally see her in the elevator or the cafeteria, and Victoria's gaze was always the same: cold, calculating, waiting for an opportunity. Maya tried not to let it bother her. She had work to do. She had a daughter to raise. She didn't have time or energy to spend on someone else's grudge. The invitation to Sunday dinner at Eleanor Cole's brownstone became a standing weekly event. The first time Maya brought Lily, she'd been nervous, uncertain how her energetic 4-year-old would behave in a home full of antiques and expensive furniture. But Eleanor had swept Lily into her arms like a long-lost grandchild, declaring her absolutely perfect and producing a collection of vintage dolls that had belonged to Ethan's sister decades ago. "I didn't know Ethan had a sister," Maya said, watching Lily carefully arrange the dolls on Eleanor's oriental rug. Eleanor's face softened with old sadness. "Catherine, she passed away when she was 12. Leukemia. It was a very difficult time for all of us, but especially for Ethan. He was 15. They were very close." Maya looked at Lily, healthy and alive, and absorbed in her imaginative play, and felt a wave of gratitude so strong it almost knocked her over. "I'm sorry, I can't imagine." "No one can until it happens." Eleanor reached over and patted Maya's hand. "But life goes on. It has to. And new children come into our lives to remind us that joy is still possible." Ethan was usually present at these dinners, though he often seemed more observer than participant, sitting in the corner with his laptop or his phone, occasionally looking up when Lily said something particularly amusing, or when Eleanor told a story about his childhood. He was guarded, Maya realized, careful with his emotions in a way that suggested they'd been used against him before. But slowly over the course of weeks, she saw him begin to relax. He started arriving earlier, staying later. He put away his phone. He let Lily climb into his lap to show him her drawings, her patience for his awkwardness apparently infinite. "Ethan likes you, Mama," Lily declared one evening as Maya was tucking her into bed in their new apartment, her own room, painted lavender at her request. "What makes you say that?" "He looks at you different, like how you look at me." Maya smiled and kissed her daughter's forehead. "Go to sleep, silly girl." But later, lying in her own bed in the darkness, she thought about Lily's words and wondered if her 4-year-old had seen something Maya had been trying not to see herself. The crisis came without warning. Maya was in her office 3 months into her new role, reviewing the quarterly reports from Vanguard's International Division when her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Webb, her colleague and increasingly her friend. "Emergency meeting in conference room A. All senior staff. Now." She grabbed her tablet and hurried down the hall, joining a stream of executives heading for the same destination. The atmosphere was tense, charged with the particular electricity that accompanied corporate disasters. Ethan was already at the head of the table when she entered, his face a mask of controlled fury. Victoria Ashford stood near the door, her expression carefully neutral, but there was something underneath it, Maya noticed, something almost like satisfaction. "We have a problem," Ethan said without preamble. "Someone has leaked confidential information about the Nexus Dynamics investigation to the press. The Wall Street Journal is running a story tomorrow morning about our decision to pull out of the acquisition. They have internal memos, they have email chains, they have details that should never have left this building." A murmur rippled through the room. Maya felt her stomach tighten. The Nexus investigation had been her work, her analysis that had uncovered the financial irregularities, her recommendation that had ultimately killed the deal. If someone had leaked details about it, "The leak appears to have originated from our risk assessment division," Ethan continued. "And now," his eyes found Maya's across the table, "specifically from documents that passed through that office." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. I'm not making accusations." Ethan's voice was level, but there was something in his eyes. A question, or perhaps a test. "I'm stating facts. The documents that were leaked came from your department. I need to know how." The room was silent. Maya could feel the weight of every gaze pressing down on her. This was the moment she'd always feared, the moment when everything she'd built would crumble, when the people who'd been waiting for her to fail would finally get their wish. But she hadn't done this. She knew she hadn't, which meant someone else had. Someone with access to her files. Someone who wanted to destroy her. Her eyes found Victoria's across the room. Victoria's expression was perfect, concerned, professional, giving nothing away. But Maya saw the faintest twitch at the corner of her mouth, the ghost of a smile. "I need access to the server logs," Maya said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Every login, every file access, every email sent from my department for the past month. If the leak came from my office, there will be a trail." "You're suggesting we investigate your own department?" "I'm suggesting we find the truth. I didn't leak those documents, Ethan. I have nothing to hide." The use of his first name in a formal meeting raised eyebrows around the table. But Maya didn't care. She was fighting for her career, her reputation, everything she'd worked so hard to build. Ethan held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Get Miss Sinclair those logs. Full access. I want answers by end of day tomorrow." Maya didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table, the same table where she'd counted bills just months ago, though it now held different papers, reviewing every access log, every timestamp, every digital footprint. Lily was asleep in her lavender room, blissfully unaware that her mother's world was threatening to collapse again. At 3:47 a.m., the exact time she'd been awake counting bills on the night before her interview, she found it. A login to her department's shared drive at 11:47 p.m. 3 weeks ago, using credentials that belonged to her assistant, a young man named Tyler who worked the late shift. But Tyler had been on vacation that week. Maya remembered because she had to cover his responsibilities herself. Someone had used Tyler's credentials while he was gone. And when she cross-referenced the login's IP address with the company's records, she found a match. Victoria Ashford's office computer. Maya stared at the screen, her exhaustion evaporating as the pieces fell into place. Victoria must have obtained Tyler's login information. Easy enough for someone in HR with access to employee records. She'd used it to access the Nexus documents, then leaked them to the press in a way that would point directly at Maya's department. It was elegant, actually. Owie, ruthless and patient, executed by someone who had been waiting for exactly the right opportunity to strike. But Victoria had made one mistake. She'd done it from her own office, assuming no one would ever look that closely at the IP addresses, assuming that Maya would be fired before any real investigation took place. She'd underestimated Maya. The confrontation happened the next morning in Ethan's office, with Victoria present by Maya's specific request. "These are the server logs," Maya said, spreading the printouts across Ethan's desk. Tyler Jenkins's credentials were used to access the Nexus files on October 3rd at 11:47 p.m. Tyler was in Florida that week visiting his grandmother. I have his travel receipts and vacation request form confirming this. Victoria's face had gone pale, but her voice was steady. "This proves nothing. Someone could have hacked into Tyler's account from anywhere." "They could have." Maya turned to face her directly. "Except the login came from an IP address registered to your office computer. I've highlighted it here and here." She pointed to the relevant lines. "The same computer you used to email the Wall Street Journal's financial reporter at 12:15 a.m. that same night. An email that, according to the journalist's publicly stated timeline, was his first contact with a Vanguard source." The room was silent. Victoria's composure cracked just slightly, a tremor in her jaw, a flash of fury in her eyes. "This is absurd. You're fabricating evidence to cover your own incompetence." "Victoria." Ethan's voice cut through like a blade. "Stop talking." She stopped. Ethan studied the documents Maya had provided. His face revealed nothing, but when he finally looked up, his eyes were cold. "Victoria, you are terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You should expect to hear from our legal department regarding potential criminal charges for corporate espionage and breach of fiduciary duty." Victoria's facade shattered. "You can't. This is a mistake. My father sits on this board." "Your father resigned from the board this morning. Once he learned about the fraudulent investment he nearly pushed through, he decided to step down rather than face an investigation. I imagine he'll be quite disappointed to learn about your activities as well." Victoria stared at him, then at Maya, her expression transforming from desperation to pure hatred. "You think you've won?" she hissed at Maya. "You're nothing. A charity case the CEO picked up because you helped his mother find a taxi. You don't belong here. You never did." Maya met her gaze without flinching. "You're right that I didn't grow up with your advantages. I didn't have your connections, your education, your family name opening doors for me. But I had something you never did. Parents who taught me that your character is defined by what you do when no one's watching, when there's nothing to gain, when helping someone might cost you everything." She paused, letting the words land. "You had every advantage in the world, Victoria, and you still couldn't win without cheating. That's the difference between us. And that's why you're leaving this building in disgrace while I stay." Victoria's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. Security arrived. She was escorted from the building. And Maya, for the first time since the crisis began, allowed herself to breathe. Later that afternoon, Maya sat alone in her office, staring out the window at a city that suddenly seemed full of possibility rather than threat. Her hands were still trembling slightly, the adrenaline of the confrontation slow to fade. But beneath the anxiety was something else. Relief, vindication, and a quiet, fierce pride. A knock at her door. She turned to find Ethan standing in the entrance, his corporate armor slightly dented, his expression unexpectedly vulnerable. "May I come in?" "Of course." He entered, closing the door behind him, and took the chair across from her desk. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. Maya blinked. "For what?" "For doubting you, even for a moment." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "When I called that meeting, when I said the leak came from your department, I saw your face. I saw what you thought I was doing, and I should have been clearer. I should have told you privately first." "You were doing your job." "I was, but I could have done it better." He paused. You've given me no reason to doubt you, Maya, not once since the day I met you. And I let someone else's actions put you in that position. Anyway, Maya considered earned this. The man before her was so different from the image she'd had of him initially. The cold billionaire, the ruthless CEO. He was those things, certainly. But he was also someone who apologized when he was wrong. Someone who valued truth over convenience. Someone who had taken a chance on a stranger because she'd done the right thing for his mother. Apology accepted, she said, on one condition. Name it. Dinner this weekend. Not at your mother's, though I love those dinners. Somewhere else. Just the two of us. Ethan's expression shifted, surprise flickering through before something warmer took its place. Are you asking me on a date, Miss Sinclair? Director Sinclair, actually, she smiled. And yes, I am. The smile that crossed his face was genuine. Not the polished, professional expression she usually saw, but something real and slightly uncertain. I would like that very much. 6 months later, the apartment in Jersey City had become a home in ways Maya hadn't expected. Lily's artwork covered the refrigerator, drawings of their family that now included a grandmother with silver hair and a tall man in a suit. The purple sneakers had been replaced by purple rain boots, then purple sandals as seasons changed. The stack of bills on the kitchen table had become a stack of college savings brochures, a problem Maya never thought she'd have the luxury of considering. She still kept her mother's coral blazer in the closet, though she rarely wore it now. She had other blazers, professional, expensive, purchased with money she'd earned herself. But she couldn't bring herself to donate it or put it away. Some talismans were too important. The note, though, she still carried. She was standing in Central Park on a Saturday afternoon, watching Lily chase pigeons while Eleanor sat on a bench nearby, when Ethan appeared beside her. Your mother seems happy, Maya observed. She is. Having Lily around has been transformative. He paused. Having you around has been transformative. Maya turned to look at him. For her or for you? Both. He met her eyes. I was thinking about what you said once, about wanting to stop being afraid, about wanting to be valued for what you contribute rather than dismissed for what you lack. I remember. I've been dismissed too, you know. Not for lack of resources, obviously, but for other things. His voice was quiet, reflective. After Catherine died, after my father threw himself into work, and my mother disappeared into grief, I learned to be invisible in my own way, to not need anyone, because needing people was dangerous. They could leave. They could die. They could look right through you. Maya reached for his hand. After months of careful, gradual progression, physical contact between them still felt significant. I see you, she said simply. I know. He laughed softly, self-deprecatingly. That's what terrifies me, and also what heals me. They stood in silence for a moment, watching Lily's joyful pursuit of birds that always managed to flutter just out of reach. I have something for you, Ethan said eventually, reaching into his jacket pocket. It's not a ring. Don't panic. It's too soon for that, and I know you'd want to take things slowly anyway. Maya's heart rate spiked despite his reassurance. What is it? He produced a small velvet box and handed it to her. Inside was a delicate gold chain with a tiny pendant, the letter M, encrusted with what looked like tiny diamonds. My mother helped me pick it out, he admitted. I wanted to give you something that was yours, not practical, not useful, just beautiful, because you deserve beautiful things. Maya lifted the necklace from its box, watching it catch the afternoon light. She thought about all the years she denied herself anything beautiful, anything unnecessary, because survival didn't leave room for luxury. Will you put it on me? She turned, lifting her hair, and felt his fingers brush against her neck as he fastened the clasp. The pendant settled just below her collarbone, a small, warm weight. My mother left me a note, Maya said, still facing away from him. When I went to college, she wrote that I deserved every good thing. She was right. I didn't believe her. For a long time, I didn't believe her. Maya turned back to face Ethan. But I'm starting to. Lily came running then, breathless and delighted, demanding to know if they could get ice cream. Eleanor rose from the bench to join them, her health improved by months of regular dinners and a 4-year-old's inexhaustible energy. They walked together through the park, 4 people who had found each other through a chain of unlikely events. A forgotten pill, a missed train, a stranger's kindness. Maya touched the pendant at her throat, thinking about how close she'd come to walking past Eleanor that morning at the station. How close she'd come to letting fear and desperation override her instincts. If she had kept walking, she would have made the interview on time. She might have gotten the job anyway. She was qualified after all, but she would have gotten it as someone else, someone who had learned to step over people in need, someone her mother wouldn't have recognized. Instead, she was here in the sunlight with her daughter, her found family, her future. You deserve every good thing, Mija. Never forget that. Maya smiled, feeling the truth of those words settle into her bones. She hadn't forgotten. She never would. Sometimes the best things don't come from running fastest toward your destination. They come from stopping. Stopping for the right person at the right moment, even when you might lose everything. Maya was 15 minutes late to the most important interview of her life, but she was right on time for something more important, being a decent human being. And that's something no amount of money can buy, and nothing can ever take away. In the quiet heroism of Maya Sinclair's story, we uncover one of life's most piercing truths. Sometimes the greatest doors open not because we arrived on time, but because we stopped to care when every instinct screamed to keep running. Maya stood at the edge of her future, bills piling up, a daughter's two small shoes, one last interview that could change everything, yet she chose to kneel beside a stranger in distress instead of racing to save herself. That single act of compassion cost her the interview, but it returned something infinitely more valuable: dignity, vindication, and a new path built on character rather than clockwork precision. Her story reminds us that kindness is never wasted, even when the world punishes it. The moments we pause for another's pain are the ones that rewrite our destiny, proving that true success isn't measured by how fast we climb, but by how human we remain when no one is watching. Maya didn't just save Elisner Cole that day. She saved the part of herself that still believed goodness matters. Which moment in Maya's journey hit you hardest? The choice at the station, the confrontation with Victoria, or the quiet victory of being seen? Share your own story of a time kindness cost you something but gave you more in the comments below. Your words might remind someone they're not alone. If this touched your soul, please hit like, subscribe for more heartfelt stories of resilience and redemption, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Thank you for being here. Let's keep choosing heart over haste together.